All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into the world of service design. And it's not just about, putting on a smile and crossing your fingers,
Yeah,
right?
definitely more to it than that.
Yeah. But it really can, transform experiences for everybody involved, not just the customers, but the employees who are working behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure.
And we've got a really interesting source material to kind of pick apart today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think we can all relate to like the frustration of calling customer service, and you get transferred like 5 times and you have to repeat your information over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what is going on behind the curtain here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is this so difficult? And service design really tries to kind of unpack that.
Yeah, it's about like really intentionally crafting that entire experience, like from the first interaction all the way to the mechanisms that are supporting that interaction,
Yeah. And the stuff that's behind the scenes. It's like you can have the most beautiful storefront.
Yeah.
But if like the back end is a total mess,
Yeah.
the customer's going to feel that.
Exactly.
It's not going to be a good experience.
They use this analogy of a restaurant in one of the sources.
Yeah.
Like you walk into a restaurant and you see the nice tables and everything. You smell the delicious food. And the waiter's really friendly. But what you don't see is what's happening in the back, right?
Right.
Like sourcing the ingredients and prepping the food, training the staff.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Like even dealing with the kitchen fires and stuff like that.
Yeah. All that invisible effort, right?
Exactly.
Just to make it seem so seamless.
Yeah.
So our source breaks down service design into 3 main components.
Mm-hmm.
People, props, and processes.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting because, again, this. It's not just about what the customer is seeing.
For sure.
It's about everybody involved in delivering the service.
Yeah. And like all the different stakeholders. Like the people is not just the customers and the employees, but it's also like the partners, the suppliers, even other customers can influence the experience too.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like if you're standing in line at the grocery store
Yeah.
and the person in front of you is taking forever, they're technically a customer,
Right.
but they're impacting your experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to think about all the different people involved.
Yeah.
And then there's props, which when I first read that, I was thinking, the physical space, like the store or the website or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's also things like brand voice, data security protocols.
Yeah. Even like the emotional tone that the employees are setting.
Oh, yeah.
It's all part of that service ecosystem.
Like when you walk into a place and you immediately get like a vibe,
Yeah.
If it's welcoming or not. And you might not be able to pinpoint exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But it's all those props working together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And then finally, there's processes, which are basically the workflows that are happening.
Right.
For anything, like whether it's ordering a coffee or applying for a loan or even just finding information on a website.
Yeah. Any search engine that you're using has those processes behind it.
And I imagine this is where it can go really wrong if they're not well thought out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Think about like being stuck in a phone loop where you're getting transferred over and over again. That's a sign that the processes aren't really well designed.
Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah.
So the source talks about this idea of front stage versus backstage. And I think that's a really great way to kind of visualize this.
Yeah.
It's like that old saying, the show must go on.
Right.
Like no matter what chaos is happening backstage.
Yeah. The audience shouldn't see that.
The audience should just experience this seamless performance.
Exactly.
And so in the case of service design, that backstage is, that's where all the magic is happening.
Yeah.
To make the front stage look effortless.
Yeah. Like imagine like a company that makes online grocery delivery really easy and convenient. Like that front stage experience is seamless. But in the back, there's like all this, warehouse operations and optimized delivery routes and, well-trained staff that are making sure everything's running smoothly.
Right. All that stuff we don't see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So service design really tries to bridge that gap between what the customer's expecting and, all those invisible systems that make it happen.
Yeah. It's like shining a light on those backstage processes and finding ways to optimize them.
Yeah.
Not just for the customer, but for everyone involved.
Now, the source makes this distinction between just designing a service and service design. Like, what's the difference there?
So think of it this way. You can design a really beautiful website, but if the underlying code is messy and disorganized, it's going to be slow and buggy and frustrating to use.
Right.
And similarly, just creating like the steps involved in a service, like say like a hotel check-in process, it isn't the same as actually designing the entire experience for both the customer and the employee.
So service design is thinking about why each step is there and like the motivation behind it.
Yeah, and how it impacts everyone.
And like what the pain points might be.
Yeah, thinking about it from everyone's perspective.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And this is especially relevant for UX designers.
Oh, for sure, because a seamless digital experience often relies on all these like back-end operations that have to be running smoothly.
Right. Like I'm thinking about the times I've tried to buy something online.
Yeah.
And I get all these error messages, or the checkout process is super clunky.
Yeah.
And it's just like so frustrating. And it's probably because the back-end processes aren't well designed.
Probably.
Yeah. So that's why service design, I think, can be such a powerful tool for UX designers.
Definitely.
Because it helps us think about the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, the big picture.
Not just the digital touch points.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what are some of the benefits for businesses that embrace service design? I know our source mentioned a few.
Yeah. Well, one of the big ones is that it can help surface conflicts that might exist within an organization. Like often there's this vision for the service that they want to deliver, but the reality might be totally different.
So it's like those family dinners where everybody's pretending everything's fine.
Yeah.
But under the surface, there's all this tension.
Exactly. Service design kind of forces those hard conversations that people might be avoiding.
Which can be uncomfortable, I imagine.
It can be, yeah. But it's necessary if you want to grow and improve.
So how does service design actually do that? Like, what are the mechanisms involved?
So one of the key tools is something called service blueprinting. And it's basically a visual representation of the entire service, from the customer journey to the internal processes that support it.
So it's like a map of the whole ecosystem, showing how everything connects.
Exactly. And by mapping it out in this way, you can start to see where there might be like bottlenecks or redundancies or areas where the customer experience might be compromised. You can also see like the dependencies between different departments or teams.
So it helps you visualize where the cracks are.
Yeah.
And where those communication breakdowns might be happening.
Exactly.
And that's where the hard conversations come in.
Yeah, because the blueprint gives you this framework for having those discussions.
So instead of sweeping those conflicts under the rug, service design forces you to confront them and actually try to find solutions.
Yeah. And by doing so, you can improve the customer experience, but you can also create a more efficient and harmonious work environment for the employees.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So blueprinting is one way that service design can help surface those conflicts.
Yeah.
But how about going beyond just identifying problems? Like, how does it help organizations actually make changes and implement solutions?
Well, another key benefit is that it can help reduce redundancies. So often different departments within an organization might be doing the same work without even realizing it.
So like that classic comedy bit where two people are digging a hole and they don't realize they're digging towards each other?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that can lead to like wasted time and effort and resources. Service design can help by taking this holistic view of the organization and identifying those duplicated efforts.
And then what, they magically disappear?
Well, not magically, but by streamlining the processes and eliminating unnecessary steps. You can free up resources and make everyone's lives easier.
Right, like get rid of those redundancies.
Yeah.
That sounds good. But I imagine actually implementing those changes can be a challenge.
It can be, yeah, especially in larger organizations.
Yeah, that have these established ways of doing things.
Yeah, where people are resistant to change.
Yeah.
But service design gives you the tools and frameworks to kind of navigate those challenges.
Okay. I'm really curious to learn more about those tools, like the specific techniques that service designers use to gather information and analyze problems and develop solutions. But I think we're going to have to save that for the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
So, welcome back to our deep dive on service design. We've been talking about how it goes beyond just, what the customer sees and looks at all those behind-the-scenes systems and processes that are driving the experience. So now I'm really excited to learn more about, what are the actual tools and techniques that are used to kind of uncover all those hidden gems, or maybe I should say hidden pain points.
Well, one of the most powerful tools that service designers use is journey mapping. And it's basically like, imagine visually plotting out the entire customer experience from the moment they first become aware of a product or service, all the way through to, their ongoing interactions.
So it's like a roadmap for the customer journey. Yeah, it's like a roadmap, but with a lot more detail. Because it's not just listing the steps that they take, but it's also capturing their emotions at each stage, like their pain points, their moments of delight.
Oh, so you might see things like frustration with a confusing website, or like excitement about receiving a personalized recommendation.
Exactly. It's about understanding that emotional landscape and then using that to make the journey more enjoyable and more human.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It kind of reminds me of those customer feedback surveys that you get after you buy something online.
Yeah.
But this is like taking it to a whole other level.
It's like a more comprehensive and empathetic approach
Yeah.
to understanding those needs and behavior.
Okay, cool. So once you have this journey map laid out, then you can start to layer in the backstage elements.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to another technique called service blueprinting.
Yes, service blueprinting. We talked about this a little bit in the first part as a way to kind of surface conflicts and identify redundancies. So I'm curious to learn more about how that actually works in practice.
So imagine taking that journey map that we just talked about and adding a whole new dimension to it, because a service blueprint visually connects those customer-facing touchpoints to all of the internal processes that are making them happen.
Oh, so you can see how everything's interconnected, like from the customer clicking add to cart to the warehouse worker actually picking that item off the shelf.
Exactly. It maps out all the people involved, the systems, the policies, the technologies, everything that goes into delivering that service.
It's making me think about that online grocery delivery example we talked about earlier, where on the surface it seems so smooth and effortless.
Right.
But behind the scenes, there's this whole, choreography of logistics and inventory management and delivery coordination.
Exactly. And service blueprinting lets you see that whole choreography.
Oh, wow.
It reveals all those hidden dependencies and potential points of failure.
That's amazing. It's like you get to peek behind the curtain and see how the whole production comes together.
Yeah. And by understanding those internal workings, you can then find opportunities to optimize things, reduce redundancies, and ultimately create a smoother experience for everyone.
So it's not just about fixing problems. It's also about proactively designing a better system.
Exactly. It's a more proactive and holistic approach.
Okay, this is starting to make a lot more sense now. So journey mapping helps you understand the customer's perspective. Service blueprinting reveals all the internal mechanics that are driving the experience. But how do you actually go from mapping and blueprinting to making changes and implementing solutions?
That's where prototyping comes in. Just like in product design, prototyping is all about testing and refining ideas before you actually go and implement them fully.
So instead of just launching like a brand new customer onboarding process and hoping for the best, you can actually test out different approaches.
Exactly. You can test them out, gather feedback, and make adjustments before you invest too much time and resources.
And that could involve things like role-playing scenarios or creating mock-ups of digital interfaces.
Yeah, even setting up like a temporary physical space to simulate the experience.
That's really cool. This all sounds very similar to user experience design.
It is. Both UX design and service design are really focused on understanding human needs and behaviors and creating these experiences that are intuitive and enjoyable and effective.
Yeah, and I guess the UX design is more focused on the digital aspects.
Yeah.
Whereas service design is broader.
Yeah, it takes a broader view.
It encompasses all the touch points, both physical and digital.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And both fields really emphasize the importance of research and iteration and collaboration.
Definitely.
In fact, I've been hearing more and more about companies trying to integrate service design principles into all different departments.
Yeah, it's not just about having like a designated service design team anymore. It's about fostering that service design mindset across the entire company.
Right, so everybody's thinking about it.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. Now, our source mentions that service design actually originated in operations and management, but clearly it's expanded way beyond that.
Yeah, it has. And what's really fascinating is that even though the term service design was coined in the 1980s, the core concepts have been around for much longer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like think about the evolution of retail, for example. Like department stores emerged in the 19th century, and they were offering a much wider selection of goods and a more personalized shopping experience than the traditional general stores.
So they were already thinking about creating a better experience for shoppers.
Exactly. It was an early form of service design.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And as technology has advanced, so too has service design.
Right.
Like the rise of e-commerce and mobile apps and social media has created all these new challenges and opportunities.
It's like those choose-your-own-adventure books we read as kids.
Yeah.
But now it's like choose-your-own customer journey.
Exactly. And there are all these possibilities for personalization and interaction. And service design helps organizations to navigate that complexity.
So are there any companies that you think are doing service design really well?
Oh, yeah. There are tons of great examples. One company that comes to mind is Zappos, the online shoe retailer.
Oh, yeah.
They're known for their exceptional customer service, and they've built their entire brand around creating this wow experience.
I've heard stories about their customer service reps, like staying on the phone for hours with people just to help them find the perfect pair of shoes.
Yeah, they really go above and beyond. They invest heavily in employee training and empowerment.
Yeah.
Because they recognize that happy and engaged employees are key to delivering great service.
Yeah, they've really embraced that whole forming relationships aspect that our source was talking about.
Yeah, it's not just about transactions. It's about building genuine connections with customers.
Which is so important.
Yeah, and it's reflected in their incredibly loyal customer base.
So how does service design address the ethical considerations that are becoming more and more important these days?
That's a great question. Ethical considerations are really woven throughout the entire service design process. It starts with understanding the needs and values of all stakeholders.
So not just the customer or the business?
Right, it's about everyone, including employees, partners, even the wider community.
So you have to think about the impact of the service on everyone.
Exactly. Like, for example, if you're designing a ride-sharing service, you need to think about the impact on drivers' wages and working conditions, as well as the environmental impact of increased traffic congestion.
Right. It's about taking that responsible and holistic approach.
Exactly.
Recognizing that there can be both positive and negative consequences.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important for service designers to have a strong ethical compass and to always be questioning their assumptions and biases.
Okay, so for someone listening to this who's thinking, this all sounds great, but where do I even start? What advice would you give them?
I would say start by just paying attention to the services that you encounter in your daily life. Think about those moments that make you say, wow, that was easy and enjoyable. Or, conversely, why does this have to be so complicated?
So become more aware of those service moments.
Yeah, and start to analyze what makes them work well or not so well.
Okay.
And once you start to see those patterns, you can then start to apply service design thinking to your own work.
I love that. It's about cultivating that service design mindset.
Yeah.
That way of looking at the world through the lens of creating better experiences.
Exactly.
For everyone.
And remember that service design is an iterative process. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
It's about constantly experimenting, learning, adapting your approach based on feedback and insights.
And it sounds like it's a really collaborative process, too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just the responsibility of the designers or the managers.
It's about everyone working together to create that better system.
That's really cool. Well, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into service design.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've gained some new insights, a fresh perspective, and maybe even a few ideas to apply in your own life and work.
Yeah, remember that it's not just about what happens on the surface. It's about understanding all those systems and processes that are shaping our experiences.
And it's about recognizing that everyone has a role to play in creating a world where services are designed to be more human-centered and efficient and delightful.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep designing for a better future.
So welcome back to the show. We've been talking a lot about, the theory and the principles of service design, but I always find it helpful to see those ideas in action, in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you have any real world examples that really illustrate how service design can be transformative?
Yeah, for sure. One that comes to mind is healthcare. Think about how much that's changed in the last few years.
Oh, yeah. Remember we used to have to fill out all that paperwork?
Oh, so much paperwork.
And wait forever in those sterile waiting rooms?
Yeah, and you just felt like a number.
Yeah, exactly. But now with telemedicine, it's just so much easier to interact with your doctor.
Yeah, and that's a great example of service design in action. Because it wasn't just about adopting the technology, right? They had to completely rethink that whole interaction, like scheduling appointments, conducting those virtual consultations, managing medical records, all of that had to be redesigned.
Yeah, and it's crazy how something as simple as a video call can totally transform the patient experience.
Right.
And I imagine this also had a big impact on the healthcare providers, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Streamlining workflows, reaching more patients.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
Exactly. And that's what service design is all about, right? Creating a better system for everybody.
Now, our source mentions that service design can even help organizations to adapt to those changing market needs. To stay ahead of the curve. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, think about banking.
Okay.
It wasn't that long ago that you had to physically go to a bank during like their very limited business hours.
Oh my gosh, yes.
To deposit a check or talk to a teller.
Standing in line.
Oh.
Filling out those deposit slips. Hoping you didn't forget your account number.
Yeah, it was a whole ordeal.
It really was. Feels like a lifetime ago.
And then came online banking.
Yeah.
And suddenly you could manage your finances from anywhere, anytime.
It was revolutionary.
It really was. And that required banks to completely rethink their service model.
Right.
Embrace technology to create a more convenient and accessible experience.
And now we've got mobile banking apps and peer-to-peer payment systems. It's incredible how much it's evolved.
Yeah, and that pace of change is only going to accelerate.
Right.
And that's where service design comes in, because it helps organizations to be more agile and responsive, anticipate those needs, and adapt their services.
So it's like future-proofing in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, all this sounds great, but I'm wondering, is there a risk of like over-engineering the customer experience? You know, making it so smooth and automated that it loses that human touch.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a delicate balance, for sure. The goal isn't to eliminate human interaction altogether.
Right.
It's about understanding where technology can enhance the experience and where human connection is still really essential.
So it's about finding the right blend.
Yeah, efficiency and empathy.
Like I'm thinking about those self-checkout kiosks at the grocery store. They're great if you just have a couple of items. But sometimes you need to talk to a real person.
Right.
Especially if you have a question or you need help with something.
Like if you scan something wrong or you can't find something.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's important to have that human backup.
Yeah, so service design recognizes that human interaction is still valuable. And it's about empowering employees to provide that support.
Exactly.
While also leveraging technology to make things more efficient.
Right, finding that balance.
Okay, so let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, this is all great, but where do I even begin? What advice would you give them?
I would say start by just paying attention to the services that you encounter in your daily life. You know, think about those moments that make you say, wow, that was so easy, or that was enjoyable. And then on the flip side, think about the moments that leave you frustrated. Like, why is this so complicated?
So it's about becoming more aware of those service moments.
Yeah, just start noticing them.
Okay.
And try to analyze what's working and what's not.
Interesting.
And once you start to see those patterns, you can start applying that service design thinking to your own work.
Yeah.
Whether you're designing a website or planning an event, or even just trying to improve a team process.
I love that. It's about cultivating that service design mindset.
Yeah.
And that's something that anyone can do.
Absolutely.
So service design is not just for designers.
It's for everyone.
It's a way of thinking.
Yeah.
About how we can create better experiences for everybody.
And remember, it's an iterative process. There's no one right answer. It's about constantly experimenting and learning and adapting.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive on service design. Hopefully you've learned some new things, gained a fresh perspective on how services are designed, and maybe even picked up some tips that you can apply in your own life.
Yeah, and just remember, it's not just about what's happening on the surface. It's about those underlying systems and processes
that are shaping our experiences.
Yeah, and we all have a role to play in making those experiences better.
So let's keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep designing for a better future.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Congratulations, you finished this episode. And don't forget to subscribe us and please click the like button. Also, leave all your questions inside of our comment zone. I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.